Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. I like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. Today, we're welcoming the co-owner of Norra Hem, a stunning cliffside cabin on Hornby Island, one of British Columbia's enchanting Gulf Islands. What started as a 6-month renovation project turned into a 2-year labor of love, transforming a family property into a luxury short-term rental that celebrates local culture and craftsmanship. On this episode, we learn about their journey of building and launching their first rental property on an island that requires 2 ferry rides just to reach, and how they've created an intentional, immersive experience that honors both the property's family legacy and the island's unique character. Whether you're dreaming of building a high-end cabin rental in a remote location, passionate about supporting local businesses, or searching for ways to create truly memorable experiences for your guests, this episode is invaluable. We'll explore everything from managing major renovation surprises to curating the perfect arrival experience and how to maintain authenticity while delivering luxury accommodations. Let's do it. Leeson, it is so good to have you on the podcast. I will admit, for everyone listening, this is our second try. I had internet issues the first time, but we called it quits early on, and we are giving it a second go. I'm so grateful for you joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you're joining me from a fun location, so let's start there. Why don't you tell me where you're podcasting from right now and a little bit about your cabin to give people some context?
Yeah, so right now I'm at Norra Hem, so our cabin on Hornby Island. So Hornby Island is one of the Gulf islands off Vancouver Island. It's a quaint, eclectic little island, 2 islands away, so it's kind of a 2 ferry ride to get here. And Norra Hem is a cliffside cabin. It overlooks the ocean and Denman Island, which is our other island next to us, and Vancouver Island in the distance. It's a soft Scandinavian design that my husband and I built together, crazy enough.
Okay, I have to admit, as someone who's built a cabin in like a town with a highway right nearby, I hear island cabin and I'm like, this sounds very intimidating. Can you take us back to because this is your first short-term rental, correct?
This is our first short-term rental. So we did help out. So Kieran, my husband, his parents have a place in Hawaii that they lived, because they lived between Hornby Island and Hawaii for many of their, I know.
Truly living the dream.
Yeah. And so for a little bit of time, we helped sort of manage their short-term rental for a bit when his mom passed away. So we helped that for a little bit. So we have a little bit of experience. I have to say that was a crazy thing, just like jumping into renting a place in Hawaii where we knew nobody. So
and talk about long distance. You were still living where you're living now? You weren't in Hawaii, were you?
No, we were still on Vancouver Island, hadn't been to Hawaii in years, didn't know what. Yeah, it was an interesting venture. So we had a little taste of that, but we'd never done a short-term rental. We always knew we wanted to, but had never taken that on. But we had done renovations before. We'd renovated a couple of places on Vancouver Island in Victoria. So we had a little bit of renovation experience from that.
Okay, which is kind of the perfect way to go in, right? Because the two things that are often most intimidating are the actual work of a build or a reno, and then the hosting, right? One comes first, so you deal with the paralysis around the work, and then after that's done, you're like, oh crap, now I need to learn how to host. But you entered this having a little bit of both of them, which probably made it feel more approachable.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely, when we took on this renovation, we definitely didn't realize how massive of a renovation it was going to be. We had done a basement suite, we had built a basement suite in our last house, and which was a full gut too. It was a kitchen, bathroom, full renovation. So that took us a few years. So we had that flavor, but this place, we thought coming in, it was going to be 6 months. We're going to come quickly, turn it around, do this renovation. And we quickly found out it was going to be huge. It was everything, siding.
Oh my God, that's the worst nightmare.
Everything you can imagine. When we actually had fully painted the outside of our house, sanded the cedar, painted it, thinking okay, we're just going to throw in the windows, put in some flooring in a kitchen, and we're going to be done. And then when we started taking out the windows, we realized, oh my gosh, no, there's water getting in through our siding. We have to rip out all the siding. We had to rip out the insulation, like redo absolutely everything, put in a septic system, like absolutely everything you can imagine. So it turned into being a 2-year venture.
Okay, I have to say, I kind of prefer to have conversations like this than with someone who's like, everything went as planned. We actually finished under budget.
Oh my
But also that happens so rarely that I feel like for people listening, it needs to be like, nope, this is the norm. This is actually what happens 90% of the time.
100%. In every renovation we've done, and this will be our third renovation, it is never as planned. It's always way more expensive, and there's always problems along the way. And here we experienced almost everyone. So I definitely think for folks, like, prepare.
Prepare for worst case scenario. And then if it isn't worst case, great. You're like delighted instead of the other way around.
Absolutely. And then you're not like devastated and thinking, okay, how am I going to make this work? Like for us, we thought, okay, 6 months, I was on mat leave. We thought like, okay, we could make this work while I was on mat leave and finish it. And then we had to plan. We had to, like, I had to leave my job. We had to plan how we were, because we were halfway finished, and we're like, okay, well, we have to finish. So how are we going to make this work? We had to move up to full time.
You can't just stop when you're halfway done. Like, oops, we ran out of money, because then all the money you've spent is absolutely wasted. You can never get it back.
100%. Then you can't do anything with it. So we're like, okay, well, we have to make this work. Like, we have to find a way to make finishing this renovation. You know, we had already put down a deposit on our kitchen, even though we had to wait like another year for the kitchen to come because we were just not ready. And so we were already so far in that we're like, we have to figure it out.
Yeah. So how did your life change at that moment when you're like, oh crap, this is not what we thought it was? Did you leave your jobs? Did you move? Like, what changed for you? How did you make that happen?
Yeah. So when we bought this place, like we had never really planned on it. It was a kind of a last minute, like we had just had our twins. We were just finishing up our house because we were going to sell that house because it was really small. And we realized after having twins, we're like, wow, I guess a 2-bedroom, tiny little wartime house was not going to be big enough. And so then we like rushed to finish that. And then once we finished that, we found out that Kieran's dad needed to sell this place because he just financially couldn't keep both places because his mom had passed away. And so it was like a spur of the moment. Like we had to either try to buy this place to try to keep it in our family and make some revenue off of it so that we could keep it. Or let it go. And so that's when we decided we'll take the money that we made from the sale of our place and put it in here. Kieran, my husband, quit his job completely because we knew he couldn't do both. Like he couldn't fully renovate this place. And if we were to pay someone to do it, oh my gosh, like paying someone to come to Hornby Island plus get all the product here is just like a fortune. So we knew we were trying to like save money somehow. So that's what we did. He quit his job. I was on mat leave, so we thought like this is the only time we're going to be able to do this. So we had 6-month-old twins at the time, and we thought, okay, we'll kind of go between these two places because he quit his job, I wasn't working, we'll go between. But then when we realized like 6 months in, this is going to be a huge endeavor, we had to completely change our plans. So I left my full-time job. I took on a part-time virtual job, and we basically moved up here, and between the two of us, I worked part-time, he worked full-time on here. We were nap time warriors. That's what we called ourselves, because every time the kids nap, like he worked, but then when the kids napped, I came down here and like helped him. And because he was a solo guy, so he was doing like everything, the floors and siding and everything, all solo guy doing it, which is so hard. So,
amazing that he had the skills. There's a lot of people who in that situation would be like, okay, I'd like to quit my job and do this, but I literally don't have the skills.
Yeah. And he's super handy. He worked in construction. He had done some really big, like he was a foreman, and he had done he'd done renovations before. And thank goodness he was the kind of guy who grew up like always having to figure things out. Like he built his first car, he built his first boat. Like he was the kind of like guy who like on a small island, you have to do it yourself. So like so lucky that he was able to do that.
Okay, so you mentioned that this place was his dad's first. I feel like this is something I'm starting to notice in cabin culture, and not always, and it doesn't need to be, but historically, it feels like a piece of cabin culture has been the family legacy aspect of it. And it
Yeah.
shows up in different ways, whether it's a family cabin that someone has to get rid of, and then the younger generation is deeply emotionally invested in it. So they
Mhm.
figure out a way to financially make it work. In my case, it wasn't that, but it was a way to allow me to be closer to family. So
Right.
I'm at my cabin right now and I'm
Yeah,
just 7
same.
minutes down the road from my family.
Yeah.
And so it's a way, and I used inherited money from my grandparents who loved this area, right? It feels like typically our houses don't have that same legacy, but cabins seem to. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about your husband's history with Hornby Island. Um, yeah, that brought you back there and
Yeah.
made it like an easy no-brainer. We need to do this.
For sure. So, like, he grew up on this property. He didn't grow up, like, this cabin was built later on. So it was already partially built. Like, probably, let me just think here, when was it built? Like, back in 2010, I think they built it. And so it was sort of on Hornby, there's a big thing called land partnership. So at one point, Kieran's parents actually sold off half their property to someone, and that's what this cabin kind of became. Is that that person was going to live in this cabin, but it didn't end up working out, and they ended up actually buying back that property from those people, or this part of
Huh.
their property,
Yeah.
and then finished up the cabin then, but did it in such a way that like just like odd people came and finished it. So
Yeah.
it was done like really poorly, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
but like for us, like this is where Kieran grew up. Like his parents came here on a bus from California and built their own home, like built a log home with their family all by themselves. So there's just, and Hornby Island, like it's just such a magical, peaceful place that the thought of for us losing this place and never having that connection here again, and for Kieran, like he knows everybody on Hornby. Like it's such a small community that everybody knows everybody. You
Yeah.
know, his best friend used to live right next door to us here. Like his dad, was right next door. And so there's just so many connections that it felt so like it felt like we just had to make it work. Like we had to somehow keep this property to have those memories and like to be able also to share those memories with other people. Like that's what makes it feel so amazing for us is we get to
Mhm.
now share this amazing place with people all over the world, which is so like there's
Right.
something so like it just fills your heart like in a lot of ways feeling like when people come and they're like wow this was such a lovely stay like we just felt so at peace and we just enjoyed it so much it just really warms my heart.
And who would you want to be hosting you more than someone with that kind of history there, right? I think that's what drew me to Airbnb at the very beginning,
Yeah,
before I even hosted, was the idea of like, oh, I could travel and stay at a big hotel that's like a Hilton and has chains and whatever. Sure, it's local employees working there.
yeah,
Or I could stay at a house that like someone local lives in or owns,
yeah,
and like I can ask them recommendations. And it feels like in a small place like an island, that is exactly who you want, pointing you to like what you should do, where you should go, how to enjoy it.
yeah, for sure. And that's something that we really um, try to offer here. Like we put our whole heart and soul into this, and I think that people really feel that when they come. Like I love sharing with them recommendations like oh guys like try this place like you absolutely have to see this and even coming here like when we built this place our whole intention was we wanted to support the local economy like almost everything in
Yeah.
here is local whether it's like our kitchen was from a local kitchen company like everything that people see is like well, not everything most things are local like our deck was from wood from the Cowichan Valley. Like we just really tried to make it be like 100% local as much as we could. And even like our products,
Wow.
like when our guests come, we provide like Hornby Island wine and Denman Island chocolate. And like just because these small islands rely on tourism, like so many people are relying on that. Like their little businesses are all like supported by people coming here and visiting and I think that that's something that is so huge like when people come here I hope they feel that like we
Yeah.
collaborated with a lot of local businesses too Rest House Hoxton Home like there are lots of places that we wanted to support as local businesses and like us small businesses need to stick together.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking. I do just want to say that my giant dog, Bernie, has fallen asleep on the bed next to me and is dreaming loudly. If you hear, I don't have the heart to wake her up, but if
No,
you
we
hear
both.
just some little snorts, that's what it is. We were talking on the podcast a couple weeks ago about how we were talking specifically about sustainability and like creating a green space.
Yeah.
But really the core of it was like every choice we make in our spaces with what we provide and what we choose not to provide sends messages to our guests about us as people. We're not there with them, but it sends messages to us about what we value and the kind of experience we want them to have. And I'm hearing the same thing from you, focused on the local side, right? That like everything that they see being local sends them messages about how you feel about that island and about the emotional connection you have with that place. And I can't imagine that anyone cannot notice that when they're there. How do you
Yeah.
communicate that? Would a guest know? Do you have a guest book that explains where you bought these things or?
100%. We have guests, like in our guest book, it talks about the like the companies that we chose to collaborate with so that people know, because I think it's so important for people to, like for me, when I go to a place, I think like I love knowing that. I love knowing what businesses people have chosen. And I love it that people have, like for us, we wanted to curate a place that people felt that like when they first walked in, that they felt like they could see they could see brands that they recognized or learn new brands that that they haven't heard of before, that are local brands. And so we did choose places that sold like that went with our values, which was local, organic, sustainable, like so many things that we chose specifically for that. We also provide like we have a little note in the bedroom and in the bathroom telling folks like your sleep experience is collaborated with, like we use Rest House and Last Light for our linens, and like we let people know that, so that people know like, hey, this is the sleep experience you're having. You're, so that if they really enjoy it, they can also have that experience at home. And same thing like for our bath stuffs, like we specifically chose products that really evoke a sense of calm, but also a sense of nature. Like our scents are fir and cedar, just like the fir forest around us. Like we really wanted people to have that full feeling the moment that they walked in the door and everywhere they went, whether they were bathing, whether they were sleeping, whether they were, sitting on the bench and overlooking the water, like that they just really had that full like immersive experience.
Yeah. I love this podcast because I always think we're super intentional about hosting. And then I talk to people like you, and you're even more intentional than me. And I'm like, God, I haven't thought recently about the scent of our soaps. But it makes so much sense. That is one of our five senses.
Oh,
We are experiencing that. How do we, like, we have more control than we think. So it makes me wonder, does the experience that you're creating come just because you and your husband are similar people and that's why you were attracted to each other? Or did the two of you, as you were in this renovation experience with twin newborn, did you sit down and like have conversations about your values and like what values do we want to infuse in this cabin? Or was it more organic than that, of just these are things that you value as humans and always have, and so then it naturally became part of your cabin?
yeah, I think it was like all those things. And like at some point we realized that like to be really intentional, we needed to hire someone too to help us with like branding, with our intentionality, with our like our focus on our products and what that looked like. So we did hire a lady, Hannah by Design, and she helped us really try to curate a place like that, like intentional, naturally focused, sustainable, all those things. Because I have to say, I'm not an interior designer, and oh my gosh, and I'm so grateful for them.
But look at you right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. You look like you're an interior designer. You're in like this perfectly curated corner of your cabin. Like, you just gotta hire the right people.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it really helped us. Like it helped us focus because we always had that value, but it really helped us focus on like how do we really create that? Like how do we create that? Because I think in your mind you have all these good intentions and you have all these thoughts, but sometimes it's really hard to focus it on, okay, like but what are our true values and what do we want to present? Like even when we talk about branding, like branding is so tough. Like I don't think people
Oh
realize
my
like
gosh.
creating a brand, oh my gosh, like
Well, creating a good brand and doing it well
yes,
is really hard.
yes, yes. And so um having someone help guide that and say like, okay, you want this, but how do you want to build that? What kind of font do you want to use? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I guess I don't want this font. I want this font because I want to create this experience. So it
That's right.
really, like, I think we really wanted it to be successful. We really wanted it to be intentional. So having someone help guide our vision helped us tremendously. Like, it really helped us to create what we wanted by just having some of that guidance.
I honestly think that is maybe the best piece of advice for anyone who is not yet running a cabin is just like know what you do well, know what you like doing, and find people to help you with the things that you don't, because it is really, really hard to do those things, to do everything well. You can't. And it doesn't mean like it's no reflection of you as a cabin owner or host. If anything, it's a stronger reflection of that, of like knowing, having the vision. You have to have the vision of what
Yeah.
you want. They're just going to help you get there. They're not going to create that vision for you. You have to know deep down like what kind of experience you want guests to have. But all of those small decisions, we're not trained in that. I'm not an expert in fonts, but if you give me 5 and help guide me with the feeling that they each create, okay,
Yes.
I can figure that out.
They also say, like, for me, I think, because one of the biggest things is I have a vision of what I like, but I think the big thing is it's not about just what I like. It's about what I want to create. And so you always have to be, and I really loved that, like, she helped put that in check. Like, I really love this romantic looking font, but she's like, is that really what you're catering to? And I'm like, maybe not. And so having somebody just really check you on, okay, but what are you really wanting to present to people? Like, what kind of culture are you wanting to create? What kind of values do you want to have? Like, how do you want to present that? Like, it was just so huge for us to have that guidance. It was, yeah, really helpful. And the style stuff. Like, I think I can pick pretty good until she would remind me like, oh, but wait a second, like, we want to really create this. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
This is like me in a vintage store sending pictures to Sarah of Secret A-Frame, but she also runs Small Victories Design.
Yeah.
And she is now my like go-to interior designer. And I'll just send her pictures of stuff. And you could just tell by her response, be like, are we going for a nautical feel
Yeah.
here? Like, she's so good at, I immediately, because she's outside of that moment of like,
Yes.
what is the feel that is giving me? Is that what we're going for over here?
Yes.
Whereas I'm just like, this is so cool. I want it.
Yeah. You telling me like, I don't want this boho thing because I tend to go a little bit boho, and she would always put me in check. Yeah. She's like, wait a second.
So I tend to go a little too campy, a little too like kitschy, like I almost bought, still thinking about them. They're literally like lights from a boat. And I was like, this would work in my office, but it has such a distinct feel to it that it's like, okay, that could work if everything else in the office is designed around that purchase.
Yes.
But you've already designed other things and you're just throwing a light in there. That might not be the way to go.
100%.
Self-control more than anything else.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah. I definitely think that was so helpful. And yeah, choosing people to help you where you don't maybe have the necessary skills is so huge, because you really are trying to, like, for us, when we built this place, we were trying to find out like what is our niche, like what is it that we're wanting to represent. Like, we're wanting to be sort of a boutique luxury place on Hornby Island, because there really isn't a lot of that here. Like, there is a lot of more rustic and people who are just renting out their homes to help sort of pay their way too, because that's a huge thing. Like, tourism's so big here. So when we were building it, we were thinking like, we want to provide something that really isn't here, something that can be more of an experience, like a full experience, so that when you walk in, it's the scent, the texture, not just the view, but the scent and the texture and everything like that you're feeling really provides that whole experience.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question on an island, because I see a lot of the tension between locals and short-term rental owners.
Yeah.
Now, you are an interesting mix. You are a local who runs a short-term rental. What is the vibe like on a tourist island like Hornby Island when it comes to short-term rentals? Is it just like, this is part of our economy, or is there any sort of tension there?
I think it depends. Like, I think there are many locals who rent out their places on Hornby and rent it out in the summertime, because summer is booming on Hornby. and there's locals who maybe don't want it to become like, I think it really depends. Like, I think there's a mixture of people who want to see, um, like the economy develop a little bit on Hornby and see it grow a bit. And then there's people who want it to really stay as like the original way of Hornby, like um, not too overdeveloped, which I completely understand. Like, I'm sort of the mind that I think that growth is good in a really mindful way. Like, are we doing it in a
Yeah.
mindful way? Are we keeping like the environment and the sustainability factors a part of it? But also that, like, in order for people to survive here, they have to really like think outside the box. Like, there isn't much here for work, and so I think that creating tourism and ecotourism is so huge here, and we're seeing more of it. Like, I see that happening a lot more, like Fossil Beach Farms here, Tribune Bay. I think that people are trying to make it work here because it's so expensive to live. Housing is so
Yeah.
expensive, you know? So I think there's a mixture, but I think there's more openness to it here because it's so reliant on tourism that
Yeah.
people are more open to it. But there is that mix. And I think it's fair that people don't want it to be too overly commercial because that's exactly what this island is not. Like, people come here
Right.
for an eclectic cultural escape. Like, that's what people want, and I think
Yeah.
that that's the vibe we want to continue to embrace, with also ensuring that we are like moving our economy forward and making sure that people can live
Right.
and work here.
Right. It's such a tricky
Yeah.
balance of like finding the right way because tourists also weirdly don't want to necessarily go someplace that feels like they're in a tourist
Yeah.
trap. They want to go someplace that they feel like I've discovered this special place and this is where I'm choosing to vacation. So keeping that
Mhm.
local feel is actually really important for also curating a really unique experience for folks who are going there versus letting it be overrun with tourism. I don't know, it's really tricky. I was
It
just curious.
is. No, it's totally
Island.
tricky, but I think it's really lovely. Like, I think for us, I really see people like they come here and they shop here. Like, they come here and they shop at our local restaurants. They shop at our local convenience stores, and they go to the market and buy local produce from our farmers. And they go to Wayne Gann's pottery shop and they buy pottery. And like, I really see now that we've started, I mean, like, we're only 2 months in, so we're super new, but I really see how much tourism, like having something like this, really supports that economy. Like, people are, when they're here, they're shopping here, they're experiencing here, like they're supporting that local economy, which really actually feels really nice. Like, I love that feeling that people are like, yes, they're supporting our business, but they're also supporting so many other businesses. They're supporting,
Yeah.
they're supporting Strachan Valley Farm down the road, and that's lovely that they're able to do that. So I think that people can see it a little bit as um, changing that culture, but I really don't, like, to me, I see it as not. I see it as embracing that local culture and really supporting that
Yeah.
local culture.
Yeah. I think about that every time we have to restock supplies for our gift bags because I get to go around to all the small businesses that we buy them from and place another bulk to me order. And
Yeah.
like 200 might not be a lot to them, but it sure feels like a lot to me. Right. And if you
Yeah.
had, let's say there's 10 short-term rentals in Freeport who every month is placing or every couple of months is placing orders for 20 new salt tins or 20 new stickers. I feel like that's not insignificant.
No.
And we really have the opportunity to have a big impact, especially on smaller towns, just by choosing
Yeah.
local folks to supply the stuff that we have there.
100%. And
Okay.
that's, I think, super important for people to see that maybe you wouldn't see unless you're sort of in that experience, that like, yeah, you really are. Like, even here in the winter, like, winter is pretty quiet on Hornby, but we've actually had a lot of people coming in. Like, we just had people leave just this morning, and like, they're just heading to Wayne Gann Pottery Studio right now to support there. So I think,
Yeah.
like, again, like, that's still like supporting the economy even in the off season.
Yes. I get so excited. Our friend Eric made a broom for our cabin. He makes brooms at his store in Wiscasset. Now, Wiscasset is like 45 minutes north of here, but we put it in our guest book and we tag him in a lot of Instagram posts.
Yeah.
And every someone messages me or writes in a guest book, like, oh, we left here to go to Wiscasset and see the store. I think about just how we're not doing anything other than buying local and then telling people that we
Yes.
bought local. And those two small things can make such a difference and it's not even, I'm not doing anybody a favor. It's a fun feeling of community. Like you said,
Yes.
we're all in together as small businesses. And sometimes when I think about, I do believe that short-term rental should be regulated in different places to protect locals,
Yeah.
but I don't think they should be banned because I just
No.
see it as beautiful. Like we are a small business like other small businesses, and there is this beautiful synergy that can come from that.
100%. Because not only did we support small businesses in building this place, but we also support small businesses in the ongoing business of it. You know, our towels, our bedding, our
Right.
products, like even like our cleaning supplies is from Mint Cleaning, which is a local company here on Vancouver Island. Like I think there's so many opportunities to support local that like I really hope people can hear that like it's such an amazing experience, but also so lovely to be able to support those businesses ongoing. And even on social media, like same thing for us. Like we're just started, but we really want to support those local businesses through our social media as well. And they do for us too. Like it's just, it feels like such a nice, like combination of working together to just really support each other, which is so nice. Like it feels so nice.
Yeah. And especially when you host from a distance, I have found I grew up coming to Maine. And so Maine has always been a part of me, but nobody really understood it, right? They're like, oh, you go to Maine every summer. Okay.
Yeah.
And from the minute I bought land here and started making decisions around building the cabin, every decision I feel like has made me feel closer to a state that I care about because I'm not a full-time resident, right? But it's like by making those choices, I get to know small business owners in the area. I get to feel like I'm part of that environment. And I do think when you're hosting from a distance, you can lose that. You can opt out of it and just like, you know, and guilty, I do this for some of our supplies still, but like have them Amazon auto shipped in, right? Like you can do that. Or you can look into, is there a refill place where we can avoid waste and then go to that business every time to refill our shampoo and our soap, right? You get to know that business owner. You tag them in your Instagram posts. It just feels like there's so many small opportunities to feel more invested in your community. And for me, that feels even more important when I'm not living there because you would lose that otherwise.
Yeah, 100%.
And I've done that to varying levels of success with different cabins, to be clear. So it's not all wins.
Yeah. No, and I think there's also like, there's moments when you can't too. Like, I think that it's really about the intention that you set and what you're creating. Like, is everything here 100% local? No, like there's definitely, like we, you know, our lights, we bought from the UK, but we got them on Etsy. We got them from a guy who like, he's a local potter who makes them. And it still felt really good because, you know, we're supporting someone who made these, like they're handmade pottery. Like, and I really love that, you know, it's not local, but like, it's again, we just trying to set that intention. You know, have I got things from Amazon? Yeah, I got my dishcloths from Amazon, you know, it's really about, you know, how can you do the best you can and really try to support the local economy as best you can. Like, I think that you can't, like you say, like you've had to do that too. And sometimes you have to do those things as a small business because you also have to be mindful that if you are not making money, you can't continue on either. So you have to always weigh those things, which, like for us, we're just starting out and we have to really be mindful of that. Okay, how can we make sure that we make a bit of a profit? Because there's a lot of expenses, I think, that people don't realize. Like there's like a lot of things that you have to maintain, from cleaning products to bathing products to, you know, if someone stains a towel, that's a new towel because you need to make sure that your products are, you know, in tip top shape. Like cleanliness for us is huge here. Like we want people to come and feel like, you know, that lovely experience, like the place is spotless when they arrive. And we really want to make sure that people feel that like our products are in beautiful shape, but you know, things happen and things get stained and then you have to replace them. And so there's a lot of expenses in that, you know, in keeping things up and making sure that things stay at like a top standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone said the other day when I posted that I was looking for more podcast guests, I said, please interview someone who's new to hosting because that's really helpful for me. And I was like, okay, great. This is really good feedback. And so I do want to spend a little bit of time because you're new to hosting. If you're dreaming about a cabin build or are in the midst of a build, or you just bought a place and are getting ready to host for the very first time, regardless of where you are, sometimes you just need a little help along the way. Shared experiences from someone who's been there, advice from someone who's learned a lot of lessons the hard way. That's me. Or a cheerleader as you finish up. All of these reasons are exactly why I started offering cabin consultations to our Instagram followers and friends who could use some specific one-on-one help. I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise to be transparent about our build costs and process, our organization and project management systems, our favorite and least favorite tools for renting, how we market, and how we found ourselves with almost 80,000 Instagram followers and 100% occupancy in our first year of hosting at Cozy Rock. So if that sounds like it might help you, feel free to visit us at staycozycabin.com or on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and sign up for a time to chat there. Let us in on what that experience has been like. What curveballs have you kind of been faced with? What has gone really well? What has that new to hosting experience been like for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say, because it took us so long, like we had really hoped to be open for the beginning of summer, but it just didn't happen. Like our kitchen was delayed, and then there was just delays and things. And of course, when you're on an island, oh my gosh, like one delay, it just and then trying to find a plumber. Oh my gosh, it took us 2 months to find a plumber. So there's just those things that delayed us. And so we really, really pushed. I think we worked until 3 a.m. for 2 months straight, trying to get this place finished by mid-August, because we were like, we just have to get some of the summer. We just have to try to.
We have to make some of that money. I feel that.
Some of that money. But it's not just that. I think when you're just starting out, when it's your own home and you're renovating, you're like, okay, I don't have to finish it to perfection. It can be done over time. But when you're building a short-term rental, it has to be perfect. It has to be 100% complete. You have to have absolutely everything possible. You have to have, not just everything finished, but it has to be perfectly painted. It has to be meticulously done. It has to have every product that you want, because we want, the thing for us here is we want people to come and really just have to bring their suitcase and some food. You've got everything.
That's it.
We have all of the basic amenities that you would need. That is one of the feedback that we've received is that from people, which is really lovely, is that they came and they had everything that they needed here, which is really what we want. Because also you're on an island. It's not like people, you really have to have stuff here, because for people that are coming, it's a long way to get here, and you need to have stuff that are here. So we really try to make sure that we have that for folks. But for us, just starting out, making sure we had our guest book and everything all completed, that we had all the products that we needed, that we had our Airbnb listing up, that we had it was a huge push at the very end. That's for sure. Trying to make it 100% ready. And then there's always that little bit of anxiety of are people going to like it? Are people going to have a nice time?
It's something so vulnerable.
Every time I'm waiting for a review, I'm dying inside, being like, oh my gosh, did they not like it? Did they not? Because you really put your heart and soul into it. That
I know.
If I get
it will get better.
Yeah.
The more you get, the more you'll trust. But the beginning, I remember that of just wait, I've designed this to be perfect. And then you have this moment of oh shit, is it actually perfect?
Yes.
Is my vision even right? Is this what people want?
Did you like it? Is it okay? Did you have a nice time? Was it comfortable for you? Did you sleep okay? Are the pillows comfortable enough? Do I need to take some of the stuffing out of them? Are they too thick? Are they not?
Tell me if they're too hard.
Yes.
Maybe they won't even tell me. Oh, you had a good stay? What was wrong with it? It wasn't a great stay?
Yeah,
I don't understand. You only wrote what? There's so much of the vulnerability of I've put everything I have into this. Will you like me?
Yes. And then there, for us, because it was brand new, we never stayed a night in here. We never stayed one night. We just literally started and went. We had our photographer come. So the person who Hannah by Design, who did our designing, also came and did our photography for us. And I love her as I do. She came, and we were still hanging curtains when she was photo. She was so lovely, because we were just so rushed, and she's like, don't worry. She wanted to just get us going, and she was so lovely that she came with her family, and literally while they were out doing things, we were hanging curtains and making doing those final finishing touches. And
that is so relatable.
Which I'm sure is probably the same for so many people that are just trying to make an STR, to start a short-term rental, and the yard, we were trying to grow grass. I mean, oh my gosh, I was watering 3 hours a day, just trying to get grass to grow. Cause we had to do all the landscaping here too. And so because we were okay, it can't just look like dirt. Like it has to look lovely for folks. Like we want people to be able to use the
Right.
yard and enjoy it. And so,
But it's like impossible when it's a new build, unless you're tending grass while you're building. It is nearly
yeah,
impossible to have your landscaping done at the time that you launch.
yeah. And so, I mean, I remember we were going to, like there was a farm in Saanich that we went and got, like 100 Mexican feather grasses and 100 this and 100 that, because we have deer too. So you have to find like deer resistant things. And I remember being like, okay, let's just hopefully things will look okay. And yeah, trying to grow grass. So at night it would be dark out. I got a flashlight and I'm trying to water my grass.
That's so real.
But
what changes have you made in the first like month that you did something and then you learned from guests like, okay, that's not going to work. I'm going to change this or add this or do this?
One of the things that I think that like for us, that as I've learned is just being mindful of like tips to give people for coming here. Like even we had guests just recently have to leave a night early because they didn't realize that the Sunday ferry left at 9 and not 7, and they weren't going to make their flight. And I just felt like so bad because maybe I should have been more like open about the ferry schedule. Like we always say to people, try to be mindful of like the ferries and the schedules and how to get here. But even like things I've learned along the way, because I just never want people to have a bad experience or not a bad experience, but just miss out. Like those people, I just felt so bad. Like they had to leave early because they were going to miss their flight. And so it was, for me, learning along the way is like those tips and tricks for people, bring cash. I mean, there is a Interact machine, but bring cash if you want to enjoy some of the local vendors because they have cash only. There's no cell service sometimes. So if you're getting here, download a map beforehand because you're not going to be able to use your phone along the way because there's no cell service, So I
mean, you have it worse than most people because you're on an island with ferry. Like there is so much there that people just wouldn't know until they've been there.
Yes. Yeah.
Which feels
and it's like,
I think it gets at a root.
And I think that's too, I was just going to say, like, because a lot of people come from Vancouver. So they come into Vancouver, they ferry over to Vancouver Island, they drive up Vancouver Island, they ferry over to Denman, they drive across Denman, they ferry over to Hornby, and then they come to us. Like it's a big, it's just trying to be mindful. And sometimes you don't figure it out until someone's experienced it. And you're like, oh, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should add this into our, like our description on Airbnb, or even places like, because we are from here, sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I should let people know, like even in our guest book, oh, I need to make sure that people know the times that people are open, because Hornby's kind of funny that way. Like sometimes they're open, sometimes they're not open. Like it's more of a spur of the moment thing sometimes. And so it's those little things that I've learned just even in the first few months along the way that, oh, okay, like I need to be more mindful of those things and making sure I give those like tips and tricks to people. Taking people, even just like, I really love to welcome people, mostly because I just love to meet people. Like I love to meet people and just say like, hi, welcome, like, please enjoy yourself, like that sort of thing. And so learning along the way, because sometimes I'm like, maybe people don't want that. Maybe people want their privacy and they don't want to meet me. Maybe that, so it's just
how you ask that gives them agency and makes them feel like it's okay to say no.
Yes. Like just putting it out there, like, I'd love to come and meet you, or I'd love to come and say goodbye, but also wanting to be like, but if you don't want to, that's totally okay. So just really,
I think this gets at a core. I feel like this gets at a core issue that a lot of hosts grapple with. And I think is different for every host, depending on what the business model is for your short-term rental.
Yeah.
But that's like what is and what is not within my locus of control, and how much, because like I tend to think that everything is within. So I would hear like, you missed your ferry. Oh my gosh, I have failed you.
Yes.
Whereas some hosts might be like, you're an adult traveling, like you can figure that out. Right. And so I think when I like, as a traveler, if I'm paying a lot for a high-end place with hosts who are humans who live there, I think I would really appreciate that. Yeah. So then it's like, do you owe it to me, or is it just a really nice add-on? But when you're charging a lot, it feels like you need to have a lot of those nice add-ons for people to feel like they're getting the value, right?
100%.
And you're thinking about all of that.
100%, like everything. And I think that's for us, the big thing. Like we always want people to feel like they've had a true escape, a true retreat, calm, peaceful experience, one of ease. Like we don't want this to ever feel like it wasn't an easy stay, like an easy place to come to, an easy place to experience, like just ease. Like I think there's something, that's what cabin culture is. It's coming and just feeling at peace and easy and simple living and, you know, slow. And so we really want to cater to that and really want people to have that full experience. So I think we're always, for me, I'm always mindful. And I'm also the type of person who, like, I'm sensitive. Like, I just really want you to have a really lovely time. Like, I truly want you to have a lovely time. And so if there's anything I can do to make sure that you can have a lovely time and that you really get that full experience, I really want to make sure that that happens for you. And I think, like, because we do charge a higher price, I'm always mindful that I want it to be smooth for people. Like, I want how they drive in here to be smooth. You know, oftentimes we just leave the door open for folks when they come in so that it's an easy arrival because we can.
Right.
So, you know, we leave, you know, when they walk in, we want, our diffuser to be going so it smells lovely in here. We want the lights to be on so it feels easy when they walk in and it's not, you know, wondering, you know, even our tips and tricks for the kitchen, you know, we try to make it as easy as possible. So like if people needed to, they could just look at it quickly and say, okay, this is how I work the induction cooktop, because I did not know how to use it either when I first got it. Like, how do I use this thing? You know, so just really wanting to create that. But when you're first starting, you don't know what you don't know. And so
that's right. Until someone asks you that question.
Yeah. So I think for us too, like I try to be really available for folks. Like I always say, like, if you need anything, please. And I just I just go with where they want to go. Like if they want to, like one of our guests said, like, we'd love to thank you in person. And I'm like, that is so lovely. I want to meet you and come and say, so I came down and chatted and it was lovely to meet them. But then some guests don't want that. And that's totally okay. Right. Like if you want to come here and really just escape and not see a single person, that is 100% okay with me. Like if that's what brings you joy, that's all that really matters to me, is that it brings you joy during your stay. And that's what I think, you know, it's still a learning process for us too, is just, you know, it's really taking each person's experience and what they want and trying to create that. I think just also like coming down to like when I was thinking about it too, from like first time experience, is stock. Like how much stock do you create? When you were talking about like what's like, that was a big thing that we learned at first too. We're like, how much do we need? Maybe we just need a few things and we can get it. And then we were like almost running out, and I'm like, oh my God, we've almost run out. We got to quickly go to town.
And now I overstock. So I have a shed full of like extra toilet paper and paper towel just to make sure that nobody runs out.
Us too. We learned that like in the first month, we learned that really quickly. Like, okay, maybe having like a backup of one is really not enough.
Yeah. But I think this idea, and I always say business model, because I think if you're running like a donkey or a workhorse property, which is just different business models for it, I think it is more about the churn and burn, and you don't need to think about every detail. But if you're running a unicorn property, which we are at this location, then you do think like the locus of control thing becomes really important. Like I do need to think that everything is within my locus of control, because I stop rationalizing or justifying, and instead I just start accommodating guests and making a better experience for them. The downside, or the double-edged sword of that, I think, for people like you and me who are sensitive to wanting everyone to have a good experience, is that anytime a stay isn't perfect, it can be really easy to like beat yourself up or be like, now part of it is productive. Okay, what can I change so that the next guest stay is better? And part of it isn't, where you're just like, but their stay isn't perfect. What do I do now? How do you handle that side of it? Or have you might not have experienced it yet.
Honestly, we haven't experienced that yet. Oh, I dread the day.
It's hard.
I do dread the day that somebody says, you know, we really didn't like this, or this wasn't very nice, or this, we didn't, you know, something happened, because it's going to happen, you know. Even so, we found out at the very beginning, when people were first staying, we saw some water under our fridge, and we thought, oh, someone must have just spilt some water, no big deal. So we cleaned it up. Like our fridge and everything was brand new, and so we cleaned it up, and we thought like, oh, someone must have just spilt water. And then another guest came, and we saw water again, and I'm like, that's odd. Like, why is there another thing? And so then we had to, like, because the kick plate was actually like nailed in, we had to pull it off, because we're like, I think there's something going on. And sure enough, our fridge is leaking. And we were like, oh my God, we're on Hornby Island. This fridge, like, it's a built-in fridge, because all of our I'm trying to say, all of our appliances are integrated. And so we were like, in the moment, we were like, why did we choose that?
I thought about the smart fridge. It's like built into this one little spot. We can't just buy a new one and replace it. It's like, no, it needs to be repaired.
And so in our minds, we were like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? We have guests coming in 3 days. Like, what are we going to do? You know, we had to pull it out. And luckily enough, it was just the hose had been pulled. Like when it got installed, it probably, the hose where it drips into the pan in the back just came out. So luckily enough, we just had to put it back and do whatever.
Oh my God, thank God.
But that was like our first, oh my gosh, like the fridge isn't going to work. We're going to have this issue. We've got guests coming. Like, how do we let them down?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember which guests they were, but I'm pretty sure they were coming from like California or like out of town. Like these were people who were flying in for this experience. What are we going to do if we don't have a fridge? Like, trying to think of those things. Yeah, I dread that. I know it'll come sometime. I'm sure something will break and things will happen. I mean, it just happens. I mean, you can try to prevent as much as you can, but things just happen. So,
and I don't even blame guests for being upset with me. Like we had one honeymoon where the guests before them had left the hot tub cover open. I'm talking minus 20 degrees outside.
Oh, no.
And so it was almost, I mean, we're lucky we didn't lose the hot tub, to be honest, but we didn't. And so we just had to turn it back up and let it reheat. But it took in that temperature 2.5 days to get back up to a place where you would want to go in it when it's negative however much out. And it was their honeymoon. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much money I give you. You don't even, I mean, yes, the money back is nice, but like, that's not even what you want. You just want the experience you were promised. And when sometimes it just isn't in your control or you've done whatever you can, it's like a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah, for sure. Which I that's how it would feel for us too. That same thing. Like, I think people really appreciate just like the honesty and just like look, I'm really sorry. Like, I think they understand, but it still doesn't probably, like, it still impacts them. They're still probably disappointed and you're still feeling like, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been thinking recently about like, how do we, like, sure, we can refund the money, but on top of that, how do we create another experience that they weren't expecting that might replace that memory, right? If it's like, I haven't done the research on this yet, so I don't know, but Eric offers like broom making classes or spoon making classes in Wiscasset or Good Fire Brewing we love. And sometimes they do like tasting dinners. Could we be like, I am so sorry. If you don't have plans tonight, I would love to pay for you to go to this tasting dinner at this place in town. Supports that business. And then it doesn't make up for the hot tub, but it gives them another experience that I feel like can replace that positive in their like memory of their time there. I wonder if I don't know if that's the right answer, but I wonder if something like that could help.
I think that's a lovely idea. Like, I honestly think that would help so much for people, because I think it's not even about the money. I think it's about the experience for them. Like, they're wanting to have, like, for me, if I'm going somewhere, it's about that experience. Like, I want to really just immerse myself in that experience. And if that's something they were really looking to enjoy, it's like, how can I create joy somewhere else for you? Like, how can I create an experience? And I think that's a lovely idea. I'm taking that one just in case.
You should. Everybody should. I mean, not even specifics, but just to have something on hand where you're like, okay, if something bad happens, just do some research. Here's something or a collection of options I could provide them. Here's a place that could deliver them dinner or a charcuterie or whatever, to try in some way to delight them in a way that will hopefully make up for whatever piece of the experience is missing. Because it's heartbreaking when you try and have everything within your control, and then some things, it just turns out, are not within your control, and you have to figure out what to do.
No, and I think as a host, you're just always feeling that. You're always sort of like, for us, even though like everything is new and you know, we hope everything is good, there's always going to be, I'm sure there's going to be things that come up. Something's going to break, something's going to happen. And you always want to try to prevent those things, but you also just feel like, oh, there's just a little part of you that dies inside thinking like, oh, I just really hope that people have a nice time, and want to try to prevent those things. And I just think that's a lovely way to do it. I love that idea. I think that would really help people feel like you respected the fact that this was they're coming here to make memories. Like, this is something that they are choosing. Like, people can choose to stay anywhere in the world, and they're choosing your place. And I feel like that shouldn't be taken lightly. Like, I personally feel like when people come here, they're spending their hard-earned money to come here and make memories and experiences that'll last a lifetime. And I really don't want that to ever feel like, oh, it's just another guest. Oh, it's just another this. I always want people to feel like we have taken that into consideration with every person, and really truly appreciate that they're spending their money here.
Truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Truly. 'Cause I feel like for the first year, I focused a lot on the gift bags so that people knew, like, thank you for coming here. And I would write in the note, thank you. But then this year, I really started thinking more about repeat guests
yeah,
and like, okay, you've already gotten this gift bag once. What can I do that's above and beyond that to make you like to really show you, I know there are other places that you could stay and
yeah.
you are choosing to come back here. One of our guests came back for his fourth time recently, and
Oh,
his review said, this was my fourth time here, and they continued to delight me, find ways
oh,
to delight me. And I'm like, okay, that is the best measure of success, better than anything else, because it is harder with repeat guests who it has to be something different every
yeah,
time.
yeah.
But that can really show. I really appreciate the fact that you are choosing this and not any of the other places you could go.
Yeah, because again, like you're a small business, people are small, and people are so appreciative. Like when you're choosing to spend your money here, like I really want you to know that I value that and that I don't take it for granted as just being like, just an I don't know, just you're just making a choice. Like I don't want it to just be a flippant thing or ever feel like it's not
Right.
important, because it is. Like you are making that choice intentionally, and we want you to know
Yeah.
that like we're so grateful for you to have come here.
Yeah. A quote I saw on Instagram recently that Spencer from Retreat at Fall Branch Falls and I have talked about, and we're going to do a whole podcast episode about it sometime soon. The quote was, hospitality is making people feel seen.
Uh,
And I loved that because I think we do that in some ways, but then there's always room for growth in that area. And
yeah,
that's what you were just saying. Like, really, that's what people want. When something goes wrong, to know that you really see their trip as important. You see them as humans who are experiencing disappointment enough that you want to do something to fix that. Not just
yeah,
the original problem, but really to like validate their investment and their choice to be there to celebrate that thing. It's really, I
yeah.
think, just about being seen. Even when something goes really wrong, I was talking to my dad the other day. He was traveling in Portugal, and he sends me every time he travels all of his Airbnb questions. He's always sending it to me, right? So he was like, my girlfriend slipped on the hot tub. It was slimy on the bottom and hurt herself pretty badly. What
Oh
should we
gosh.
do? And we talked through it the other night. That was a couple weeks ago, but I saw him the other night. We were talking through it, and I was like, what did you want from that experience? And really what they wanted was for him to acknowledge that she had been hurt pretty badly and that sucks. Like, I think at the end of the day, they said they wanted it not to happen to other people, which I believe is true.
Yeah.
But I really think it was just about like, I need you to take this seriously because I'm in pain right now.
Yeah.
And I just want you to see that. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that at its core is what most of this stuff comes down to.
Yeah, because people just want to be heard and valued and respected. Like I think that that's so key in hospitality, in customer service. Like people want to feel
Yeah.
heard, they want to feel appreciated, they want to feel like I think that's just like an innate thing that people want just in life in general. And I think especially when you're trying to make people feel, special. Bless you. Bless you.
I just muted myself.
I know.
You gave me a mic.
Sorry.
And especially with is like yours and mine, where we are trying to make it higher end. What that means is you end up getting a lot of people celebrating things. I was reading our guest book last night, and it's like almost every single one was an anniversary, an engagement, right after their wedding, a birthday, tons of celebrations. And with that comes even more pressure,
Yes.
not in a good way, but like you really want to deliver for them so that they remember that was the gift for that person. How do you make it that much more special?
Yeah, and I think those are the things too that can make you just stand out above and beyond anybody else, is just really trying to make those tailored experiences. Like even the guest that we had just now, sometimes you're not sure, like, do we want it? Because we usually provide like a local bottle of wine, but I also was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe he's a beer guy. It's his 40th birthday. So I just put a couple cans of beer in the fridge, because I just thought like, then you have a choice. Like you can choose to have one or the other or neither. Like it's totally up to you, because this was going to be a surprise. So I was like, oh, I just wanted to like cover my bases and just make sure. And I like, here, like have some beer, have some wine, and like then you can choose. And then like even we have someone who's coming to again celebrate a birthday, because we definitely find that people are coming for like celebrations or things like that. We have a wedding coming up in the summer. I asked her like, what does he like? Does he like beer or wine, or like what would be? And she's like, oh, he's a Merlot guy. And I'm like, okay, I will get like.
There we go. That's information.
Totally. Because I think like those things really make the difference. Like when you're really trying to make an individual experience, like I think providing lovely things, like you say, like gifts for guests and provide, I think people really appreciate those things. Like for us,
Yes.
we provide croissants in the freezer that they can make fresh for the morning. So like they take it out at night and in the morning they can bake fresh in the morning. And we get so many comments of people saying how much they appreciate that. Like just those little things. And sometimes people have them, sometimes people don't. But it's amazing how just those little thoughts are so appreciated. Those little things.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think, you know,
Yes, like you're going to want breakfast the next morning that you're here. We have thought about that. My cleaner once when we arrived, I think at this point, this was like a year in and we had become good friends with her. So I think she knew that the first thing we always do when we arrive is light the wood stove. And it was winter, so we walk in and we're like ready for the fire. And so Sean went to set everything up and he's like, there was already, we call it biscuit wood, but kindling, there was already like a little teepee of kindling, a starter right underneath it. All he had to do was light it. And that sometimes is the most annoying part of a fire is you have to like cut up the biscuit wood, you have to set it up, you have to get it lit like before it's actually going.
Yes.
And I was just like, that is the smallest touch that made a world of difference upon our arrival, right?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's thinking about what are those small things that we can do that actually don't take all that much work. A lot of us, unlike you, rely on cleaners because we're not nearby. So it becomes a little bit harder to do that stuff.
Yeah, no,
but I think
for
there's ways to do it. And it really does make a difference.
Yeah. And we do think about that because at some point we may not be here full time. Like right now we're here more full time, but at some point we may not be, like we may decide to go back. And so what is that going to look like? Like that's also another thing that you have to think about is like who can clean and what does that look like? Yeah. Is that somebody that you can trust? And is it someone who's going to make sure that that they're providing that same experience? Because
yes. That is the biggest. I will say that anyone hosting from a distance, finding the right cleaner.
Yes.
And shout out to Tammy, who is the love of my life here in Freeport. But my biggest piece of advice on that is don't look for a cleaner. Look for someone who cares about hospitality. Because Tammy is not, she's a professional artist. She's not a professional cleaner. She was looking for a flexible side. She was interested in the hosting part. And those people are the ones that are always thinking, like that's her favorite part of the job. Is thinking about putting together the guest bags, thinking about, it's someone's anniversary. Should I go get this for them? Like that's what you need. If you have that, you're golden. Someone who has the same mindset as you, that's all you need.
Yeah. And like really but it's hard to provide. Yes. But see, that's the thing. Like wants to provide that experience. Like that's what we need to find at some point is somebody who really wants to provide that full experience and enjoys that. Like it's not just the cleaning. It's also like folding the towels nicely, making sure things look like the blankets are set out perfectly. And, that everything is set and tailored properly and that the bathroom is set out nicely and that you've got the diffuser on and you've got music playing. And we got
that detail is a nice one.
Yeah. Like those little things just really make like all the difference. I feel like just for people, and they're just such little things, I think, but like, that's something that
doesn't take much
in just like the few people that we've had, like we've been really lucky to have been really booked up since we opened, which we're so grateful for. And that's even been like some of the comments is like, I walked in and it was lovely. Like it was just like a lovely experience right off the bat. And I think like that's what we want to provide is for sure. But finding a cleaner. And
this has been such a treat. I love that. I always do pre-interviews and I have a general idea of what we'll talk about, but I love when it kind of surprises me and goes in directions that I wasn't expecting. But this one is like, I am leaving having my own mindset pushed, my own hosting. So I can only imagine that people listening, new hosts and seasoned hosts, are going to find a lot of value from this. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I so appreciate having this chat.
Thanks so much for joining us, and if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.